The highway stretched endlessly into the October darkness, a ribbon of asphalt cutting through the heart of Tennessee like a scar. Jake Sullivan's hands gripped the handlebars of his black Harley-Davidson, the vibration of the engine, a steady pulse that had become as familiar as his own heartbeat over 20 years of riding. The cold night air bit at his face, carrying with it the scent of pine and distant rain. And something else, something he couldn't name but felt deep in his chest, a sense of unfinished business, a weight that never quite lifted. Behind him, four headlights cut through the darkness in formation, his crew, his brothers and sister. The Iron Riders Motorcycle Club riding home from Nashville, where they'd spent the day at a Veterans Memorial honoring the fallen, honoring Jackson Miller, among others. Jackson, who'd taken the bullet meant for Jake in a dusty Afghan village 15 years ago. Jackson, whose last words were about his daughter. "Take care of Melissa," he'd gasped, blood bubbling at his lips. "Promise me, Reaper. Promise." Jake had promised, and he'd failed. Melissa Miller had been 8 years old when she vanished from a community center parking lot 12 years ago. One moment she was there waiting for her grandmother to finish a quilting class. The next gone, like smoke, like a ghost. The investigation had gone nowhere. No witnesses, no evidence, no body. Just a little girl with her father's brave eyes disappeared into the vast machinery of human evil. Jake carried that failure like a stone in his chest every day for 12 years. The neon glow of a gas station emerged from the darkness ahead, a bright oasis of fluorescent light at mile marker 213 on Interstate 40. Jake checked his watch, 2:17 in the morning. They'd been riding for 6 hours straight, and his crew needed fuel coffee and a chance to stretch legs that had gone numb from vibration and cold. He raised his left hand, signaling the turn. The formation followed him smoothly into the parking lot, 5 motorcycles moving like a single organism, years of riding together, creating an instinctive choreography. They pulled up to the pumps and aligned engines, rumbling, then falling silent one by one. The sudden quiet was almost oppressive. Jake dismounted, his 6'3" frame unfolding stiffly, his leather vest worn smooth by 2 decades of weather, and road bore the Iron Rider's patch on the back, a skull with wings rendered in silver thread against black leather. Beneath it, the rocker that read President, a title he'd never wanted but had earned through the respect of men and women who'd become more than friends. They'd become family in a way his actual family had never been. Marco Santos, nicknamed Wrench for his mechanical genius, killed his engine and immediately headed for the convenience store entrance. 45 years old, stocky and powerful, with arms covered in tattoos that told the story of his service in Army intelligence and the daughter he saw every other weekend. "Coffee run," he announced. "Who wants?" Black 2 sugars, called Tanya McKenzie, already moving to fill her tank. Red bandana wrapped around dark hair threaded with gray, 42 years old, and tough as tempered steel. She'd been a cop once before she'd witnessed corruption so deep it had poisoned her faith in the badge. The Iron Riders had given her a new family, a new purpose. And if they got those little powdered donuts, grab some. Michael Morrison, called Big Mike for obvious reasons, stayed by the bikes, his gentle eyes scanning the parking lot with the awareness of a man who'd spent years as a social worker in the worst neighborhoods of Memphis. 52 years old, 6'5", built like a refrigerator, but with the softest heart Jake had ever known. "I'm good, brother," he said quietly. Carlos Ramirez, Ghost, already ran his phone out, checking tire pressure with the obsessive precision of a man who'd been a Marine sniper. 39, quiet to the point of invisibility, sometimes struggling with PTSD that made him more comfortable with machines than people. He nodded at Jake but said nothing. Ghost rarely said anything unless it mattered. Jake stretched, joints popping, and began filling his tank. The smell of gasoline was sharp and familiar. The night was cold enough to see his breath. Above, stars struggled to shine through a haze of light pollution and gathering clouds. A storm was coming. He could feel it in his bones the way old injuries always predicted weather changes. That's when Tanya's voice cut through the mundane rhythm of the stop. Jake! Just his name. But the tone made every nerve in his body go electric. Sharp. Urgent. Wrong. He turned. Tanya wasn't looking at him. She was staring at something across the parking lot, gas nozzle forgotten in her hand, diesel spilling unnoticed onto the concrete at her feet. Jake followed her gaze. A white cargo van sat 3 pumps away, engine running, windows tinted so dark they looked like holes in reality. Nothing unusual about that. People left engines running all the time at gas stations. But something about this van felt wrong. The way it was positioned, angled slightly away from the pumps. The way the driver's seat was empty, but the engine purred. The way one of the rear windows, the darkest one, had something pressed against it from the inside. A hand, small, pale, a child's hand. And behind that hand, a face. Jake's blood turned to ice water in his veins. The little girl couldn't have been more than 8 years old. Brown hair tangled and dirty, face pale and streaked with mascara that had run from crying. Eyes wide with terror, so absolute it transcended expression and became something else. A void, a scream frozen in time. Those eyes locked onto Tanya's, held, and the girl's mouth moved, forming words with desperate precision. Help me! Help me! Help me! Then her other hand appeared, pressing a crumpled piece of notebook paper against the glass. Scrawled in shaky crayon letters, the kind a child makes when their hands are shaking too hard to write clearly, were 3 words that stopped Jake's heart. Help, kidnapped. For 3 seconds, nobody moved. The world contracted to that single moment, that single window, that single child. Then Jake's training kicked in. 20 years as a Marine, 15 years leading men who had seen combat. Instincts honed in places where hesitation meant death. Ghost! His voice was ice and iron. Get behind that van now. Block the exit. Ghost moved instantly, no questions, already reading the situation. His motorcycle roared to life, positioning directly behind the van's rear bumper. Big Mike, call 911. Jake was already moving toward the van, slow and deliberate. Tanya, keep eyes on that window. Marco. But Marco was already inside the gas station, visible through the glass doors. He'd seen something. Someone. A man stood at the counter, waiting while the cashier processed a credit card. 40s greasy hair falling past his collar jacket, stained with sweat and something darker. Nervous energy radiated from him like heat shimmer off asphalt. He kept glancing toward the parking lot, toward the white van. His fingers drummed the counter in an arrhythmic pattern. His right hand never left his jacket pocket. Marco's jaw clenched. This was him, the kidnapper. Outside, Jake circled the van like a predator. Calm, calculated, every sense heightened to combat readiness. His boots crunched on gravel. He moved to the driver's side, first peering through the tinted windshield. Empty. He moved to the side door. Locked. Then he saw her through a gap where the window tint didn't quite reach the edge. The little girl, no older than Melissa had been, zip-tied to a metal bar that had been welded to the inside of the van's frame, the kind of modification that screamed premeditation. Planning. This wasn't opportunity. This was hunting. Her wrists were raw and bleeding where the plastic had cut into skin. Her face was swollen from hours of crying. She wore a pink jacket with unicorns on it, the kind of innocent detail that made the horror worse. One unicorn had a smiling face. The girl wearing the jacket looked like she'd forgotten how to smile. Jake's fists clenched so hard his knuckles cracked like gunshots. He tapped the window gently. The girl flinched, animal terror in her eyes. For a moment, she looked at him like he might be worse than what she already knew. And Jake understood. To her, he probably looked terrifying. 6'3", 220 pounds of muscle and scar tissue, gray beard, leather vest with a skull on it, tattoos covering both arms. He looked like violence. He made his voice as soft as he knew how. Fatherly, the voice he used with his own daughter on the rare occasions he got to see her. Hey, sweetheart, my name's Jake. I'm not going to let anything happen to you. You understand, nod if you understand. The girl stared at him, processing, evaluating, making a decision that no 8-year-old should ever have to make. Trust the scary stranger or stay with the monster she already knew. She nodded, tears streaming down her face, carving clean lines through the dirt. Good girl. Jake kept his voice steady even though rage was building in his chest like a pressure cooker. We're going to get you out. Just stay quiet for a few more minutes. Can you do that, dude? Another nod. What's your name, sweetheart? The girl's lips moved. Jake leaned closer to the glass, straining to hear. Emma, she whispered. Emma Davis. Emma, you're doing so good, so brave. Your mom's going to be so proud of you. Just a little longer, okay? But then Emma's eyes widened, looking past Jake to something across the street. Her mouth formed words, two men. Jake turned slowly, following her gaze. Across the street, parked in the shadows of a closed auto repair shop, sat a black SUV with tinted windows. Engine running, just sitting there, watching. Jake's combat instinct screamed warning. Tanya, he said quietly, not taking his eyes off the SUV. Black vehicle, 11 o'clock. We've got company. Inside the gas station, the kidnapper was getting his credit card back. The transaction complete. Marco watched him grab a pack of cigarettes and 2 energy drinks, then turned toward the door. Marco stepped directly into his path. Excuse me, brother. Marco's tone was friendly. His body language was anything but. 6 feet of muscle blocking the exit. You dropped something. The man's eyes narrowed. Up close, Marco could see the sweat on his forehead despite the cold night. Could smell the sour fear stink coming off him. I didn't drop nothing. Move. I'm pretty sure you did. Marco didn't move an inch. Behind him, Tiffany, the cashier, a young woman who'd been working the graveyard shift and just wanted to get through without incident, sensed the sudden tension. Her hand drifted toward the panic button under the counter. Outside, Big Mike was on the phone, his deep voice steady and professional. Yeah, we got a possible kidnapping situation. White cargo van, license plate, Tango Hotel 7429. Child visible in the back, appears to be restrained. Male suspect inside the building. We're at the Fastway Gas on mile marker 213 Interstate 40 eastbound. The 911 operator's voice crackled through the phone. Sir, officers are en route. ETA 6 minutes. Do not approach the suspect. I repeat, do not approach. Too late for that, ma'am, Big Mike said, watching Marco through the glass. Just get here fast. The black SUV's headlights flicked on. It's moving, Ghost said quietly, his hand inside his vest, where Jake knew he kept a pistol. Legal carry, but this was about to get complicated. The SUV roared across the street into the gas station parking lot, tires squealing. It came to a hard stop between the pumps and the convenience store. The driver's door opened. A man stepped out, 51, maybe 52, military bearing in the way he moved, the way he held himself. Cold eyes that had seen violence and felt nothing. He wore a dark jacket and jeans, and in his right hand, held casually at his side, was a pistol. Step away from the van, he said. His voice was flat, professional. A man giving orders he expected to be followed. Now, the Iron Riders spread out instinctively. Jake, Tanya, Ghost, Big Mike. a defensive formation putting themselves between the gunman and Emma. Years of training and brotherhood creating choreography without words. Inside the van, Emma watched everything with huge, terrified eyes. But Jake noticed something else in those eyes now. Not just fear, determination. This little girl had already survived hours of captivity. She was a fighter. You boys picked the wrong night to be heroes, the gunman said. That cargo belongs to people you don't want to meet. Jake felt his pulse slow as breathing deepened. Combat calm, the state where time stretched and every detail became crystal clear. She's not cargo, he said quietly. She's a child. She's insurance. The gunman's finger rested along the slide of his pistol, not on the trigger. Not yet. And you're about to make a very expensive mistake. Back off before this gets bloody. The sirens were louder now, maybe 90 seconds out. The gunman heard them too. His jaw tightened. Listen to me carefully, Jake said, his voice carrying the authority of 20 years leading men in combat. Those sirens, that's police. They're going to be here in less than 2 minutes. You can shoot one, maybe two of us before we take you down. But you won't get away. And that little girl's getting out of this van tonight. Those are the facts. You can accept them or you can die. Your choice. The gunman's eyes flicked between Jake and the road. Calculating. The sirens were very close now, red and blue lights visible in the distance. Inside the convenience store, the man's hand moved toward his jacket pocket. Marco saw it, every muscle in his body coiled. I wouldn't do that if I were you, brother. Marco's voice dropped an octave. The friendliness evaporated. There's 5 of us out there, one of you, and we don't take kindly to people who hurt kids. The man's eyes darted to the window. He saw them now. The other bikers surrounding his van like wolves around wounded prey. The big one blocking his escape route. The woman standing guard. His van was boxed in. Panic and rage twisted his face into something ugly. His hand flew out of his pocket, not holding a weapon, but making a desperate grab for the door handle. Marco was faster. He grabbed the man's wrist, twisted it behind his back in one fluid motion, the kind of move he'd learned in Army intelligence when dealing with uncooperative sources. The man grunted in pain, tried to struggle. Marco applied more pressure. You're not going anywhere, you sick bastard, Marco growled. The man stumbled, went down hard on his knees. Marco held him there, one knee in the small of his back. Tiffany was already on the phone with police, her voice high and scared. The manager, Sarah, a woman in her 50s who'd seen enough in 20 years of graveyard shifts to know evil when it walked through her door, rushed out from behind the counter with a handful of zip ties. Here, she said, her voice shaking but her hands steady. Within seconds, they had the kidnapper face down on the floor, hands secured behind his back, with the same kind of restraints he'd used on Emma. Outside, the gunman made his decision. He locked eyes with Emma through the van window one last time, and Jake saw it. A promise. I'll be back. Wade, the gunman shouted toward the convenience store. We're done here. Our employer will handle this differently. He backed toward the SUV, gun still raised. Got in. The engine roared. Then the SUV peeled out of the parking lot, heading in the opposite direction from the approaching sirens, disappearing into the darkness. 2 police cars screeched into the gas station 30 seconds later. Officers jumping out with weapons drawn, moving into tactical formation. Jake raised his hands, immediately stepping away from the van. We got a kidnapped child in that van, he called out, voice clear and calm. Suspect is on the ground inside the station, secured. Child needs immediate medical attention. She's been restrained for hours. The lead officer, a woman in her late 30s with sharp eyes and the bearing of someone who'd seen too much, lowered her weapon slightly. Her nameplate read Bennett. Step back, she ordered. All of you, hands where I can see them. The Iron Riders complied. They knew how this worked. They were bikers, tattoos and leather. To the police, they looked like trouble until proven otherwise. Detective Bennett approached the van carefully. She peered through the window, saw Emma, and her entire demeanor changed. The professional mask cracked for just a second, revealing the human underneath, the mother underneath. "Oh, baby," Bennett said softly. "It's okay. We're going to get you out." She called for bolt cutters. Within 2 minutes, the van was opened. The smell that came out made Jake's stomach turn. Urine, fear, the stink of trauma. A female officer, Thompson, climbed into the van speaking in gentle tones. "Hello, sweetheart. My name's Officer Thompson. You're safe now. Your mom's going to be here really soon, I promise." Emma just stared beyond words now, beyond anything except the animal relief of survival. Officer Thompson carefully cut the zip ties. Emma's wrists were raw and bloody. She'd been pulling against them for hours trying to free herself. As the officers lifted Emma from the van, she turned back, looking at the bikers standing there with their hands raised. Her eyes found Jake's. She didn't say anything, just looked at him with something that broke his heart and put it back together at the same time. Recognition, not of him specifically, but of what he represented. Safety, the promise kept. Then she was gone, wrapped in a blanket, carried to an ambulance. Detective Bennett turned to Jake and his crew. "You're all going to need to come to the station. Give statements." "Yes, ma'am," Jake said. Inside the convenience store, officers were hauling the kidnapper to his feet. His face was pale, sweat-soaked. Marco had checked his wallet while they waited for police. Dennis Wade, 43 years old, address in Memphis. As Wade was led past Jake toward a patrol car, he looked up. Their eyes met, and Jake saw it there. Not remorse, not fear, just cold calculation. This man wasn't afraid of being mobbed. He was afraid of something else, someone else. "You have no idea what you've done," Wade said quietly. "No idea who you've pissed off." 3 hours later, Jake sat in an interrogation room at the police station, giving his statement to Detective Bennett for the second time. They'd been there since 3 in the morning, recounting every detail, every decision, every second of the rescue. Bennett set down her man and looked at him with tired eyes. "You took an enormous risk," she said. Not unkindly. If Wade had been armed, if the second man had decided to start shooting, this could have gone very differently. "I know," Jake said quietly, "but we couldn't just watch." Bennett was silent for a moment. Then she said, "I want you to know something. We ran Wade's information. Dennis Wade is a convicted sex offender. Did 2 years in Georgia for solicitation of a minor. He's got warrants in Tennessee, Kentucky, Louisiana, and Georgia for multiple counts related to trafficking." Jake felt something cold settle in his chest. "How many kids?" "That we know of, 5 over the last 8 years. 5 that were found." She paused. "And 1 we're still looking for. A boy named Marcus abducted in Memphis 3 months ago. 5 children, and those were just the ones they knew about." "Emma Davis," Jake said. "The girl, where is she now?" "Hospital. Getting checked out. Her mother's with her." Bennett hesitated. "The mother asked about you, asked to thank you." 20 minutes later, a woman in her early 40s with Emma's same brown eyes rushed into the waiting room. Her name was Jennifer Davis, and she looked like she'd aged 10 years in one night. "Thank you." She choked out, tears streaming down her face. "Thank you, thank you, thank you. If you hadn't been there, if you hadn't seen her, I don't know." Her voice broke. Jake stood up and held her while she cried, let her sob into his leather vest, let her shake and break and release 6 hours of terror. Tanya stepping forward, her own eyes wet. "Your daughter's incredibly brave," she said softly. "She was smart, quick thinking. She wrote that sign. She pressed it against the window. She did everything right." Jennifer pulled back, wiping her eyes. She asked about you, she said to Jake. In the ambulance, she kept saying the nice bikers. She called you the nice bikers who saved her. Something in Jake's chest cracked open. Later, after Jennifer had left to return to the hospital, Detective Bennett brought Jake a cup of terrible coffee and sat down across from him. We found some things in Wade's van, she said. She slid a photograph across the table. Old Polaroid edges worn. 6 little girls lined up against a white wall. No smiles, just empty eyes and defeated postures. Emma was one of them, looking slightly younger. But it was another girl in the photo that made Jake's hands start shaking. Brown hair, 8 years old, familiar eyes. That looked like anyone you know, Bennett asked quietly. Jake couldn't breathe. Melissa Miller. Bennett's eyes sharpened. The missing girl from 12 years ago, Jackson Miller's daughter. Yeah, Jake's voice was barely a whisper. Jackson was my best friend. He died saving my life in Afghanistan. I promised him I'd protect Melissa. 3 years later, she disappeared. I've been looking for 12 years. Bennett was very still. Jake, I need to ask you something. Have you been investigating Melissa's case on your own? No, I kept tabs. Called the detective every few months for the first few years. Frank Morrison. He retired about 5 years ago. Told me the case was cold. Told me to move on. Jake looked up. But I couldn't. How do you move on from a promise like that? Bennett reached across the table, tapped the Polaroid. Dennis Wade was questioned during the Melissa Miller investigation. Did you know that? Jake's head snapped up. What? He worked as a maintenance man at the community center where Melissa was last seen, interviewed as a potential witness, but there was no evidence connecting him to the disappearance. He was cleared. The room spun. Wade had been questioned 12 years ago and cleared. Who cleared him? Jake's voice was dangerous now. Detective Frank Morrison. The weight of that sat between them. A detective who'd retired early, a case that went cold too fast, a maintenance man with a history who got cleared despite being at the scene. Something was wrong with that investigation, Jake said. Maybe. Bennett's voice was careful. But that was a long time ago. Different jurisdiction, different case. Is it? Jake pushed the Polaroid back across the table. Emma and Melissa in the same photo. Wade connected to both. How is this different? Bennett sighed. I don't know, but I'm going to find out. She paused. There's an FBI agent coming in tomorrow. Victoria Hayes. Trafficking is federal jurisdiction. She'll be taking over the case. Will she look into the Melissa connection? I'll make sure she knows about it. The next morning, Jake got a call from Agent Victoria Hayes. Her voice was crisp, professional. Mr. Sullivan, Detective Bennett, told me you were instrumental in the Emma Davis rescue. I'd like to meet with you, discuss what you saw, and I understand you have information about a potential connection to an older missing persons case. Melissa Miller. Yes, can you come to the field office today, 10 a.m.? Jake looked at the photograph of Jackson Miller he kept on his workbench. Jackson in his Marine uniform, smiling alive. I'll be there, Jake said. 2 hours later, Jake sat in Hayes' office. She poured coffee, and they sat on opposite sides of her desk. I've read Detective Bennett's report, Hayes said, and I've watched the security camera footage from the gas station. What you and your club did was brave, also reckless, and potentially illegal. But it saved Emma Davis's life. She pulled out the Polaroid photograph. Tell me about this one. Jake pointed to the girl with familiar eyes. Melissa Miller, 8 years old when she disappeared. 12 years ago, her father was Jackson Miller, Marine Corps, killed in Afghanistan. I promised him I'd look after her. And Dennis Wade was questioned in that investigation. According to Detective Bennett, yes, by Frank Morrison, who cleared him. Hayes was quiet, studying Jake's face. You think Morrison made a mistake? I think Morrison might have made more than a mistake. That's a serious allegation. I know, Jake met her eyes. But Wade worked at the community center. He had access. He had opportunity. And 12 years later, he's arrested for trafficking with a photo that includes Melissa. That's not coincidence. Hayes nodded slowly. I tend to agree. She pulled out another photograph. Crime scene photo, a basement, concrete walls, a metal cage, children's clothing scattered on the floor. Jake's hands tightened on his coffee cup. We found evidence of at least 7 children having been held in that location over the past 18 months. Hayes continued. DNA evidence is being processed. But Wade's not talking, lawyered up immediately, and his lawyer is expensive, very expensive. Someone's paying for it. Yes, someone with resources. Hayes closed the folder. The man in the SUV, the one who pulled a gun. Detective Bennett said you got a good look at him. She opened her laptop, turned it so Jake could see. A grid of photographs appeared. 24 faces, all men between 40 and 60. Take your time. Jake scanned methodically, then stopped. Third row, second from right. Him. Hayes clicked on the photograph. Raymond Foster, age 51, former Army Rangers, then private military contractor, currently lists his employment as security consultant. She paused. He's also been flagged by Homeland Security for suspicious travel patterns. We suspect trafficking routes. What about Emma? Is she safe? She's under protection, officers outside her home monitoring her school. Hayes hesitated. Emma's asking to see you. Me, you specifically. Her mother says she hasn't spoken more than a few words to anyone except you. The trauma psychologist thinks it might help if you visited. When? Today, if possible. 2 hours later, Jake sat in Jennifer Davis's living room. Jennifer brought him sweet tea. Emma appeared at the top of the stairs, looking smaller in daylight. Wearing jeans and a sweater with a cat on it, her wrists were bandaged. She came down slowly, then crossed the living room and climbed into his lap, burying her face in his shoulder. Jennifer's eyes filled with tears. Jake wrapped his arms carefully around this small broken bird of a child. You're safe, he whispered. I promise, you're safe. Emma pulled back after a minute. The bad man in the black car. He said he'd come back. He looked at me and I knew he meant it. He can't get to you. Your mom has police protection. The FBI is watching, and if anything happens, you call me. Jake showed her his phone. I'm going to give your mom my number. If you ever get scared, you have her call me. Okay. Emma studied him with those 2 old eyes. My daddy used to say that brave people are the ones who do the right thing even when they're scared. Were you scared? Yeah, Jake said honestly. I was scared. But you helped anyway. That's what brave people do. Emma was quiet for a moment, then, can I tell you a secret? Of course you can. Emma leaned close, whispered in his ear. My daddy didn't die in an accident. The bad men killed him. Jake kept his voice calm. Why do you think that, honey? Because he told me. Not that they would kill him, but he told me that if anything happened to him, it wasn't an accident. He said there were bad men doing bad things and he was trying to stop them. He said I should remember the bird. The bird? Emma nodded seriously. He said it a lot in the last few weeks. Remember the bird? Remember the bird. I didn't know what he meant. Jennifer spoke up. Jake, my husband Mark, was an FBI agent. He worked on trafficking cases. And about 3 months before he died, he became cautious, secretive. He stopped talking about his cases at home. He started telling Emma strange things about being careful, about remembering things. Remember the bird, Emma repeated. Jake's mind raced. An FBI agent investigating trafficking dies in a convenient accident. Weeks later, his daughter is targeted. A bird, some kind of code. Mrs. Davis, did your husband leave any files, any personal notes? Jennifer hesitated. The FBI took everything from his office after he died, but he had boxes in the garage, personal things. I couldn't bring myself to go through them. 20 minutes later, Jake and Marco were in the Davis garage sorting through cardboard boxes. Old case files, newspaper clippings, photographs. Then Marco opened a box labeled Personal Research. Inside were photographs, newspaper articles about Melissa Miller's disappearance, maps, handwritten notes. This wasn't official FBI work. This was personal investigation. Your husband was investigating Melissa's case, Jake said quietly to Jennifer, on his own time. At the bottom of the box was an external hard drive, black, small, with a white label showing a simple drawing of a mockingbird. That's the bird, Emma said, pointing. Daddy drew that on his calendar sometimes. Marco held the drive. We need to see what's on this. Back at Jake's garage, Marco plugged the hard drive into his laptop. It was encrypted, password protected. Try Melissa, Jake suggested. Marco typed. The drive unlocked. For 3 hours, they read through file after file, surveillance logs, financial records, photographs, email chains, the accumulated evidence of a federal agent who'd stumbled onto something too big. Mark Davis had been investigating a trafficking network for over 2 years. He'd identified patterns, shell companies, real estate transactions, and at the center, one name appeared repeatedly: David Winters, real estate developer, philanthropist, major donor to both political parties, owner of properties across the Southeast, founder of the Winters Foundation for At-Risk Youth. This is incredible, Marco said, scrolling through financial records. Davis tracked money from Winters companies to offshore accounts. He documented property transfers. And look at this, a spreadsheet, names, dates, locations, children who'd gone missing over 15 years, dozens of them. And next to many names, a location of Winters' property. Melissa Miller's name was on the list. Last known location, Riverside Youth Center, Memphis. Property owned by Winters Foundation. Jake's hands shook. There's more, Marco said. He opened a video file. Mark Davis appeared on screen, sitting in what looked like his home office. The timestamp showed 2 weeks before his death. If you're watching this, they got me, Mark's recorded voice said. I've been investigating David Winters for 2 years. He runs the largest child trafficking operation in the Southeast. He uses his real estate holdings as transit points and holding locations. His partner is Raymond Foster, former military contractor who handles security and transportation. They have protection at every level: corrupted officials, judges, police officers. Mark paused, his face haggard. I've identified 12 missing children who definitely passed through Winters' network, including Melissa Miller, daughter of fallen Marine Jackson Miller. My own daughter, Emma, is now on their radar because I've gotten too close. If I'm gone, someone needs to protect her. Someone needs to stop Winters. All the evidence is here, but you need to get it to someone you can trust, because I don't know how deep the corruption goes. The video ended. Jake called Hayes immediately, told her they needed to meet urgently. When Hayes arrived and saw what they had, her professional mask cracked. This is everything, she breathed. Financial evidence, witness testimony, property records. Davis built a complete case and was killed for it, Jake said. Hayes was quiet. If we move on this, we need to be absolutely certain. Winters has connections. One mistake and he walks. How long to build a case? Weeks, maybe months. We need to verify every piece of evidence. We don't have months, Jake interrupted. Emma's already been targeted once. How many more people have to die while you verify paperwork? I understand your frustration, but this is how the system works. The system didn't save Melissa Miller 12 years ago. The system didn't stop Wade from trafficking 5 other children. The system got Mark Davis killed. Hayes stood up. Mr. Sullivan, you are not law enforcement. If you take action against Winters, you will be arrested. Do you understand? I understand that you're telling me to stand down while an 8-year-old girl lives in fear. Hayes gathered the laptop and hard drive. I'm taking this evidence, and I'm putting a formal warning on record. Stay away from David Winters. Let us do our jobs. After she left, Marco looked at Jake. We're not staying away, are we? Hell no. That night, Jake called a meeting at the Iron Riders clubhouse. 20 members gathered listening while Jake explained everything. When he finished, Tanya spoke. So we're going after a millionaire with federal protection who kills anyone who gets too close. Yes. She grinned. I'm in. Ghost nodded. If there's a chance Melissa's still alive. Big Mike, children are being hurt. We stop it. One by one, every member voted. Unanimous. Over the next 72 hours, the Iron Riders became an investigation unit. Marco hacked into property records and identified 18 properties owned by Winters or his shell companies. Ghost and Big Mike conducted surveillance. Tanya reached out to former police colleagues. Jake spent hours with Mark Davis's files building a mental map of Winters' network. On the fourth night, Emma had another nightmare. Jennifer called Jake at 2 in the morning. She's asking for you. Jake arrived to find Emma at the kitchen table wrapped in a blanket, shaking. The same dream, he asked gently. Emma nodded. The bad man comes back. Jake sat beside her. When will it stop? When will I stop being scared? Emma asked. When the bad men can't hurt you anymore. When they're locked up. Emma reached out, took his hand. The other girls, the ones in the picture with me, what happened to them? Some are safe now, some we're still looking for. Melissa, the girl you promised to protect. Is she one of them? Yes. Emma squeezed his hand. Then we have to find her. You have to keep your promise. The next morning, Detective Bennett called. We have a problem. Frank Morrison is dead. Jake's blood went cold. How? Apparent suicide, gunshot wound weapon at the scene note, taking responsibility for mishandling the Melissa Miller investigation. Bennett paused. But I don't buy it. This feels like a cleanup. Winters tying up loose ends. That afternoon, Tanya's motorcycle brake lines were cut. That night, Big Mike's house was vandalized. Spray paint, stop digging or die. Jake called another meeting. They're escalating. We need to decide if we keep pushing. The vote was unanimous again. They kept going. Marco found it 2 days later. A scheduled delivery. Property address in rural Virginia. 3 girls ages 8 to 12 being transferred. Date Sunday 4 days from now. This is it, Marco said. Active trafficking. We document it, force the FBI's hand. Jake studied the information. Remote location, large farmhouse, minimal neighbors. We go, we document, then we hand it to Hayes in a package she can't ignore. This is completely illegal, Marco said. I know. Sunday morning, 2 teams headed out. Jake, Marco, and Tanya to Virginia. Ghost and Big Mike to a storage facility in Tennessee. The Thompson property was isolated. White farmhouse surrounded by fields and woods. They approached on foot through the trees, set up surveillance positions. At noon, a white van arrived. Jake watched through his camera as a heavy-set man emerged. From the house, another man appeared. Kenneth Thompson. They opened the van's rear doors. 3 girls climbed out, drugged or exhausted, stumbling. Jake took photographs, dozens of them, evidence. Then the front door opened and more people emerged. Young women, late teens or early 20s. 4 of them. They didn't look like visitors. They looked like prisoners. Through the lens, Jake scanned faces and then his heart stopped. One of the young women had dark hair and features that were hauntingly familiar. Older than he remembered, damaged by years of captivity, but unmistakable. Melissa Miller, alive. His hands shook so badly he nearly dropped the camera. "Jake!" Tanya's voice was urgent. "What is it?" "It's her," he managed. "It's Melissa." 12 years, and there she was. Every instinct screamed at Jake to charge the house, but training held him back. Going in blind would get people killed. He forced himself to keep photographing. Then movement, a car approaching, expensive sedan black. The driver's door opened and David Winters stepped out. 55 years old, distinguished looking, wearing slacks and a polo shirt. He smiled at Thompson, shook his hand. Jake photographed everything. Winters at the property, Winters with Thompson, Winters standing near the van with kidnapped girls. Evidence, irrefutable evidence. Winters went inside. 20 minutes later, he emerged with Raymond Foster. They were all here, the entire network's leadership. "We need to call this in," Marco whispered, "right now." But Jake's phone buzzed. Text from Big Mike. "Found something, active transport, multiple children, calling FBI. Then trouble, armed guards, ghost hit, need backup." Jake's blood went cold. His crew was in danger. He made the impossible decision. "Marco, you stay here. Keep documenting. Call Hayes, give her this location. Tanya, you're with me." "Jake," Marco started. "Our brothers need us. You get the FBI here. You save Melissa. I'll be back." They ran through the woods back to the bikes. Jake called Hayes while running. "Agent Hayes, we have visual confirmation of David Winters at a property holding multiple trafficking victims. Address 1847 Rural Route 29, Virginia. Multiple children being held. Melissa Miller is there. Send everyone." Then he started his Harley and opened the throttle, racing toward Tennessee. Behind him, Marco stayed in position, camera rolling, documenting everything. The Tennessee highway blurred beneath Jake's wheels as he pushed past 100 miles per hour. Ghost was hit. Big Mike was alone against armed guards. Tanya rode beside him, struggling to keep pace. His phone rang. "Marco. Jake, FBI just arrived at the Virginia property. 6 vehicles, SWAT team. They're going in." Relief and anguish warred in Jake's chest. "Melissa, don't know yet. I'll update when I can." Another call, Agent Hayes' voice tight with controlled fury. "Sullivan, what the hell did you do? You conducted illegal surveillance, trespassed, and now I have a tactical situation. Did you get Winters?" Winters was gone by the time we arrived. Thompson claims Winters was just visiting. "We're searching now, but Melissa Miller is there. Dark hair, early 20s. Silence. Then we found 7 young women. If one of them is Melissa Miller, that changes everything. And the children? We found them. Safe, traumatized, but unharmed." Pause. "Where are you right now?" "Tennessee. My crew ran into trouble." "What have you people done?" "What we had to." Jake ended the call. The storage facility appeared ahead. Ghosts and Big Mike's motorcycles parked outside. The gate hung open. Too quiet. Jake and Tanya pulled in slowly, hands near weapons. Inside, they found Big Mike sitting on the concrete floor, applying pressure to Ghost's shoulder. Blood soaked through a makeshift bandage. Ghost was conscious, but pale. "About time," Ghost said weakly. "How bad?" Jake dropped to his knees. "Through and through," Big Mike said. "Missed the artery, but he needs a hospital." "The guards." Big Mike gestured toward the office. 3 men sat zip-tied to chairs. Sirens approached. Ambulance arriving. The next hours were chaos. Police secured the facility, discovered holding cells in the basement. The guards were arrested. Ghost was transported to the hospital. Jake and Tanya gave statements. Then Agent Hayes arrived. She pulled Jake into a private room. "You have systematically violated federal law. I should have you arrested right now." "But you won't," Jake said calmly, "because we delivered you David Winters." "We don't have Winters. He left before we arrived." "But you have the property, you have the victims, you have Thompson, and you have evidence." Hayes sat down heavily. Kenneth Thompson is cooperating. Fully, he's terrified. Winters threatened his family. He's giving us names, locations, financial records. And Melissa, Hayes's expression softened. We believe one of the young women is Melissa Miller. DNA testing will confirm. She's at the hospital now, severely traumatized. Can't or won't speak, but alive. Jake felt something break open in his chest. 12 years, and now finally he'd kept his promise. I need to see her. Hayes looked at him for a long moment. She's not the little girl you remember. What she's been through has changed her. I know. Tomorrow morning, with a counselor present. That night, Jake sat in the hospital waiting room while Ghost was in surgery. Big Mike dozed. Tanya paced. Marco called with an update. FBI executed search warrants on 6 more properties. Found evidence at all of them. And Jake, they found Marcus, the boy who went missing 3 months ago, in a house in Kentucky, alive. Jake closed his eyes. That's good. But Winters and Foster are still in the wind. Both disappeared. Around midnight, Jennifer Davis called. Emma had seen news reports. She wanted to talk to Jake. You found her, Emma said when she got on the phone. You found Melissa. You kept your promise. Yeah, I did. My daddy would be proud. The next morning, Jake sat in a hospital room across from a young woman with dark hair and haunted eyes. Melissa Miller had survived 12 years in hell. A trauma counselor sat beside her. Agent Hayes stood near the door. Melissa, Jake said gently, my name is Jake Sullivan. I was your father's best friend in the Marines. He died saving my life. You were only 3 years old. Melissa stared at him with no recognition. Before he died, he asked me to take care of you. And I tried. But when you disappeared, I couldn't find you. I've been looking for 12 years, and I'm so sorry I didn't find you sooner. Jake pulled out his phone, showed her a photograph. Jackson Miller in uniform, holding 3-year-old Melissa on his shoulders. This is your father. He was the bravest man I ever knew, and he loved you more than anything. Something shifted in Melissa's eyes, a flicker of memory. I have more photos of your father. Whenever you want to see them, I'll show you. And whenever you want to talk, I'll listen. I'm not going anywhere. Melissa's lips moved, the first words she'd spoken in days. Jake, his throat tightened. Yeah, that's right. My father talked about Jake, said Jake would come, said to wait for Jake. Tears started sliding down her face. I waited so long. Jake moved carefully, slowly, and when Melissa didn't pull away, he put his arms around her. This broken young woman who'd survived the unsurvivable. I'm here now, he whispered. I'm here, and I'm not leaving. I promise. She sobbed into his shoulder, crying that comes from somewhere beyond words. Release. Recognition. The beginning of healing. They sat like that for 20 minutes. When she finally pulled back, exhausted, the counselor helped her lie down. Jake stayed beside her bed until she fell asleep. Hayes pulled him aside in the hallway. That was good. You got through to her. She remembers her father. That's something to build on. The DNA test confirmed her identity. We've contacted her grandmother. Hayes paused. There's something else. Emma Davis has been asking to meet Melissa. She says they were together, that Melissa protected her. Jake's head came up. Emma and Melissa knew each other. According to Emma, Melissa was moved through the network multiple times. 3 months ago, Emma was held in the same place as Melissa for 2 weeks before Emma's father died. Melissa protected her from the worst of it. The pieces connected. That's how Emma knew Melissa. Over the next 3 days, a picture emerged from victim testimonies. David Winters had been running his network for over 15 years. Raymond Foster handled operations. Dennis Wade was one of dozens of transporters. The FBI recovered 37 victims from properties across 7 states. But Winters and Foster remained at large. Then 4 days after the Virginia raid, Emma called Jake in the middle of the night. "He's here," she whispered. "The bad man. He's outside my house." Jake was already moving. "Where's your mother? Where are the police?" "Mommy's asleep. The police car is outside, but I saw him. In the backyard. The black car man." "Emma, listen. Wake your mother. Lock your bedroom door. Stay on the phone. I'm calling the police right now." He put Emma on hold, called 911 too. Then back to Emma. "Police are coming. I'm coming. Stay in your room. Don't open it for anyone except your mother or police." "He's gone. He ran when I screamed." Jake was already on his bike. He called Big Mike Tanya Marco. "Raymond Foster just tried to get to Emma Davis. Converge on her location. Now." By the time Jake arrived, police were searching. They found evidence of attempted entry through a basement window. Boot prints, but no sign of Foster. Emma ran to Jake when she saw him. "He came back, just like he said." Agent Hayes arrived an hour later. "We're moving Jennifer and Emma into protective custody, safe house federal protection. Foster won't get another chance." "He's desperate," Jake said. "The network is collapsing. Emma's a witness. He's tying up loose ends." For 2 days, nothing happened. Then Marco picked up chatter on dark web forums. Someone was offering money for information on Emma Davis's location. $200,000. "They're crowdsourcing her location," Marco told Jake. "Winters must be funding it." That night, Jake sat with Melissa in her hospital room. She was stronger now, able to have longer conversations. "Emma," Melissa said suddenly, "the little girl from the house, is she safe?" "She is, protected. I tried to protect her. When they brought her in, she was so scared. I told her stories about my father, about brave people, about Jake, who would come." She looked at him. "I told her about you. I needed to believe someone was coming. And we did. We found you both. The other girls, in the photograph, did you find them?" This was harder. Some had been recovered, others hadn't. "Some. We're still looking for others." Melissa nodded slowly. "Their names. I remember their names. I can help." Over the next hours, Melissa gave testimony that Hayes described as the most comprehensive she'd ever heard. Names, dates, locations, 12 years of careful observation. That information led to 3 more arrests and 2 more victims recovered. But still no Winters, still no Foster. Then Marco got a hit. Financial transaction traced to a property in Mexico. A villa on the coast owned by a front company connected to Winters. "He's there," Marco said. "Winters. The transaction patterns match." Jake called Hayes. "We have Winters' location, Mexico." "How did you get this?" "Does it matter?" Hayes was quiet. "Mexico is outside our jurisdiction. We'll have to coordinate with Mexican authorities. It could take weeks. Weeks he'll use to disappear. I understand your frustration, but there are procedures. We know where he is right now. Every day we wait is another day he has to run." "What are you suggesting?" Jake was suggesting something crazy, something illegal. "I'm suggesting we go get him ourselves." "Absolutely not. That's kidnapping, international incident. You'd spend the rest of your life in prison. Only if we get caught." "Jake, think about it. Winters has connections, money. He'll pay off Mexican officials, disappear, and we'll never touch him. Or we go, now we grab him, we bring him back to face justice. That's not justice, that's vigilantism. If it were your daughter who'd spent 12 years in captivity, what would you do?" Silence. "I'm not asking for FBI approval. I'm just telling you what we're going to do." He hung up. The Iron Riders meeting that night was serious. Jake laid out the plan: travel to Mexico, locate Winters, extract him, bring him back, deliver him to the FBI. "This is international kidnapping," Marco said. "Oh, if Mexican authorities catch us, we're looking at decades in prison. If Winters' security kills us, we're just dead." "I know," Jake said. which is why this is volunteer only. Anyone who wants out, no judgment. Nobody moved. Tanya stood. I'm in. Ghost arms still in a sling. Those men tried to kill me. I'm not letting them walk free. Big Mike. The system failed those children. I'm in. Marco, might as well add kidnapping to my list of federal crimes. One by one, 20 members voted. Unanimous. We leave in 2 days, Jake said. Agent Hayes called the next morning. Her voice was carefully neutral. I need to be very clear. The FBI cannot and will not sanction any unauthorized operations on foreign soil. If American citizens were to engage in criminal activity in Mexico, they would face federal charges. Do you understand? I understand. Good. Pause. I also need to tell you that we've received intelligence suggesting Winters may attempt to leave his current location within 72 hours. If someone were to act quickly, she let the sentence hang. Jake understood. The FBI couldn't help, but they weren't stopping him either. There's one more thing, Hayes continued. Raymond Foster. We've tracked communication between him and Winters. Foster is en route to Mexico. If you encounter Foster, he's armed and extremely dangerous. He won't hesitate to kill. Noted. Jake, be careful. These men have nothing left to lose. 2 days later, 8 Iron Riders crossed into Mexico as tourists. No vests, no patches. Legitimate identification. To any observer, middle-aged Americans on a fishing trip. Weapons and tactical gear had been shipped separately through Marco's private security contacts. By the time they reached the coastal town, everything was waiting. Jake studied the villa through binoculars from a hillside. Modern architecture, white walls, blue-tinted windows built into the cliff. High walls, security cameras, 2 guards patrolling. This isn't going to be easy, Ghost observed. That's a hardened position, multiple escape routes, professional security. Then we don't go in hard, Jake said. We go in smart. Marco had hacked into the villa's security system, not to disable it, but to understand it. Camera positions, motion sensors, alarm triggers. There's a blind spot, Marco explained. Southwest corner, where the cliff drops off. Service entrance there. Locked, but I can bypass it. Guards. 2 on patrol, rotating every 4 hours. 1 inside monitoring cameras. 3 minimum, possibly more inside with Winters. Big Mike studied the timeline. We go at shift change, 4 a.m., before dawn, but after late-night security is thinking about going home. It was solid, not without risk, but solid. That evening, Emma called. She wasn't supposed to have Jake's number at the safe house, but Jennifer had given it to her anyway. Are you okay? Emma asked. I know you're doing something dangerous. I'm fine, sweetheart. You're going to get Mr. Winters, aren't you, the collector? What makes you say that? Because that's what heroes do. They don't stop until the bad guys can't hurt anyone anymore. Her voice dropped. I'm scared, even with all the police. I'm scared he'll find me. He won't. I promise, Emma. When this is over, you won't have to be scared anymore. Will you come see me when you're done? First thing, we'll get ice cream. I'd like that. Pause. Thank you for not giving up. My daddy didn't give up either. I think he'd like you. At 3:30 a.m., they moved into position. Dark clothing faces covered, weapons loaded. They approached through the darkness using the cliff's terrain as cover. Marco reached the service entrance, electronic lockpick working. 30 seconds. The door clicked, open. Inside was a utility corridor. Marco consulted his phone, the villa's layout glowing. Security room is 2 floors up. Winter's bedroom is 3rd floor east wing. They split. Ghost, Big Mike, and Tanya would secure the security room. Jake, Marco, and 2 others would go for Winters. Moving through the villa was like moving through a museum. Expensive art, marble floors, wealth built on suffering. They reached the 3rd floor. Winters' suite at the end of the hallway, double doors. Marco worked the electronic lock. That's when they heard voices. Two men speaking Spanish approaching, guards doing rounds. Jake and his team pressed into a recessed doorway, barely breathing. The guards passed within 5 feet, didn't look into shadows, kept walking. Marco's lockpick beeped softly, unlocked. They entered the suite quietly. Massive bedroom, king bed, floor-to-ceiling windows. And in the bed, illuminated by moonlight, David Winters slept. Jake crossed the room, pressed his pistol against Winters' temple, clamped a hand over his mouth. Winters' eyes flew open. "Make a sound and you die," Jake whispered. "Nod if you understand." Winters nodded frantically. "Good. Get up, slowly." They zip-tied. His hands gagged him with duct tape through a jacket over his shoulders. To cameras, it might look like Winters was being helped by friends. The extraction was working. Then as they reached the second-floor stairwell, everything went wrong. Raymond Foster stepped out of a doorway, pistol drawn. "I knew you'd come," Foster said calmly. "Winters said I was paranoid, but I know men like you." Behind Foster, 3 more men appeared. Professional contractors, all armed. "Let him go," Foster continued. "Walk away now and maybe you live." Jake's team had weapons drawn too. 4 against 4 in a narrow hallway at point-blank range. If anyone fired, everyone died. "Not happening," Jake said. "Winters is facing justice." "Justice," Foster laughed. "There's no justice, just winners and losers. Wolves and sheep. We're wolves. We take what we want." "Wrong," Ghost's voice came from behind Foster. He'd positioned himself during the confrontation, moved through a side corridor. Weapon aimed at the back of Foster's head. "We're wolves too. We just hunt different prey." Tanya and Big Mike appeared from another angle, flanking Foster's contractors. "You're surrounded," Jake said quietly. "Your men drop weapons, they walk away alive. You come with us, or we all die right here." For a long moment, nobody moved. Then one of Foster's contractors, younger than the others, lowered his weapon. "I'm not dying for this." The others followed, weapons on the ground. Foster's face twisted with rage. "Cowards!" "Smart people," Jake corrected. "Now you." Foster looked at Winters, bound and terrified. Looked at Jake and his crew. Made his decision. He raised his pistol toward Winters. "If I can't have him," Ghost fired. Single shot precisely placed. Foster dropped, pistol clattering. The contractors scattered, running. Jake checked Foster's pulse. Alive, shoulder shot. They zip-tied Foster beside Winters, carried both men down to the service entrance where the SUVs waited. 17 minutes from entry to extraction. By the time Mexican authorities arrived, the Iron Riders were 50 miles north, heading for the border. Crossing back was the most dangerous part. 2 bound men in the back of an SUV, hidden under camping equipment, but border agents were waving people through. Tourist season, lots of traffic. 45 minutes later, they were on U.S. soil. Jake called Hayes from a gas station. "We have a package for you, gift-wrapped." "Where?" Jake gave coordinates for a rest stop outside El Paso. "Be there in 2 hours. Come alone. Well, with backup. This needs to be clean." "Jake, what did you do?" "What needed to be done?" 2 hours later, FBI vehicles surrounded the rest stop. Jake and his crew handed over Winters and Foster, both screaming about kidnapping, unlawful imprisonment. Hayes looked at the 2 men, then at Jake. "Where did you find them?" "They were just sitting here, confused. Maybe they got drunk, ended up on the wrong side of the border. Happens to tourists." Hayes almost smiled. "Is that so?" She turned to her agents. "Take them into custody, read them their rights, get medical for Foster's shoulder." Then quietly to Jake, "The Mexican government is going to ask questions. Tell them you received an anonymous tip about Americans in distress. Found these 2, confused about how they got there. Happens all the time." Hayes shook her head. "You're going to give me gray hair." "You're welcome." As FBI vehicles drove away with Winters and Foster Jake's crew, stood watching the sunrise over Texas, exhausted, filthy, borderline delirious. Tanya started laughing, then Marco, then all of them. They'd done it. Against all odds, they'd actually done it. We're probably going to prison, Marco said, still laughing. Worth it, Ghost replied. Jake's phone rang. Jennifer Davis. Jake, the FBI just called. They said they arrested David Winters. That it's over. Her voice broke. Emma's asking if you're okay. I'm okay. Tell Emma it's over. She's safe. She never has to be scared again. He could hear Emma in the background, excited. Then Jennifer. She wants to know when you're coming to visit. We're being moved out of the safe house today. She wants that ice cream you promised. Tomorrow, Jake said. I'll be there tomorrow. That evening, Detective Bennett called. You did something incredibly stupid. Hayes won't tell me what, but I can guess. Mexico. No idea what you're talking about. Right. Well, whatever you didn't do in Mexico, it worked. Winters is talking. Full confession in exchange for protective custody. He's naming names. Politicians, judges, law enforcement. This is gonna blow up. Good. Jake, thank you for not giving up, for doing what needed to be done. Pause. Officially, I have to condemn vigilante action. Unofficially, the world's better with Winters in prison. After she hung up, Jake walked to his workbench and picked up the photograph of Jackson Miller. I did it, brother, he said quietly. Took me 12 years, but I kept my promise. Melissa's safe. She's going to need time to heal, but she's safe. And the man who took her is going to spend the rest of his life in prison. The next day, he visited Emma and Jennifer. Emma ran to him, threw her arms around his waist. You did it? You caught the bad man? We did it. You were brave first. You wrote that sign. You started all of this. And you finished it. Emma looked up at him. Can we get ice cream now? They went to a local shop. Emma ordered the largest sundae. Jennifer and Jake sat at a small table while Emma attacked her ice cream. What happens now? Jennifer asked. With the investigation, the trials, FBI will handle it. Winters is cooperating, giving up everyone. There will be trials probably for years. You and Emma might have to testify. Emma's strong enough. She's been through worse. Jennifer looked at her daughter. She talks about Melissa, about wanting to see her again. Melissa's asked about Emma too. Maybe when they're both ready, we can arrange something. 2 weeks later, in a carefully arranged meeting supervised by trauma counselors, Emma and Melissa sat together in a hospital conference room. Melissa was stronger now. Emma ran to her, and Melissa caught her in a careful hug. You're okay, Melissa whispered. They told me, but I needed to see. I'm okay because of you. You protected me. You told me stories and promised someone would come, and they did. Jake came. I always knew Jake would come. Jake stood in the doorway watching these two survivors find strength in each other. Beside him, Hayes said quietly, 37 victims recovered. Winters' network completely dismantled. 14 arrests, so far more coming. All because you saw a little girl's hand pressed against a van window and decided not to look away. I just did what anyone should do. But most people don't. That's what makes you different. 3 months later, the Iron Riders were invited to a ceremony at Memphis City Hall. The mayor presented them with Civilian Valor Awards. The FBI director gave a speech. Media coverage was overwhelming. Jake stood at the podium uncomfortable in dress clothes instead of leather. People keep calling us heroes. But the real heroes are the children who survived. Emma Davis, who was brave enough to write a sign. Melissa Miller, who endured 12 years and never gave up hope. Marcus and the 35 other victims. They're the heroes. We just did what you're supposed to do when you see someone in danger. We didn't look away. He paused, looking out at the audience, Emma and Jennifer in the front row. Melissa beside them, Jake's own daughter next to them. Agent Hayes, Detective Bennett, members of the Iron Riders. A wise man once told me that brave people are the ones who do the right thing even when they're scared. I was scared that night, my crew was scared, but we did it anyway. And that's all I want people to take from this. When you see evil, when you see injustice, when you see someone suffering, don't look away. Be scared if you need to be, but act anyway. That's what courage really is. The applause was deafening. After the ceremony, Jake found himself standing with Melissa and Emma. "What happens now?" Emma asked. "Do you go back to just being bikers?" Jake smiled. "My, we're never just bikers. But yeah, we go back to our lives. You go back to being a kid. Melissa works on healing. But if someone else needs help," Melissa said, "then we'll be there. That's what we do." Emma took his hand. "Thank you, Jake, for keeping your promise. Thank you for being brave enough to write that sign." 6 months later, Jake stood at Jackson Miller's grave at Arlington. He'd brought Melissa. She stood beside the white headstone reading her father's name. "He was the best man I knew," Jake said. "Brave, loyal, funny. He loved being a Marine, but more than anything, he loved being your father." Melissa touched the headstone gently. "I wish I remembered him better. I can tell you stories, as many as you want, for as long as you want to hear them." "I'd like that." They stood in silence, the autumn wind rustling through the trees. "Jake," Melissa said finally, "when they had me, I used to tell myself stories. About my father, about brave people, about you even though I barely remembered. I'd tell myself that someone was coming, someone was looking, and I held on to that. It's what kept me alive. I never stopped looking, not for one day in 12 years. I know. And that's what I want to tell other people, other victims, that someone is looking, someone cares. They're not forgotten." She turned to face him. "I want to help, however I can. Speaking at schools, supporting other survivors, working with organizations that fight trafficking. I want to use what happened to me to help others." Jake felt pride swell in his chest. "Your father would be so proud of you." "I hope so. I hope he knows I didn't give up, that I survived." "He knows." A year after the gas station rescue, Jennifer Davis launched the Mark Davis Memorial Foundation for Missing Children. The mission support families, fund investigations, provide resources for trafficking survivors. The Iron Riders became the foundation's biggest supporters. They organized charity rides, raised funds, volunteered their time. Emma, now 9, spoke at schools about awareness and safety. Melissa, now 21, worked with trauma counselors to support other survivors. Together, they became voices for those who couldn't speak. David Winters was convicted on 47 counts. Life imprisonment without parole. Raymond Foster received 30 years. Dennis Wade turned state's evidence and received 15 years. 14 other network members were convicted. The investigation exposed corrupted officials in 3 states. 2 judges were impeached. 4 police officers were prosecuted. The system that had failed was beginning to reform. But for Jake Sullivan, sitting in his garage 2 years after that cold October night, the real victory was simpler. Emma Davis was thriving. She laughed now, played with friends, talked about becoming a police officer when she grew up. Melissa Miller was rebuilding a stolen life. She'd enrolled in community college, made friends, started dating carefully. The trauma would always be part of her, but it wouldn't define her. And 37 other victims were free, getting help, healing. That was the real victory. Jake's phone rang. Emma calling from home. "Hi, sweetheart." "Hi, Jake. Guess what? I got an A on my English paper. We had to write about heroes. I wrote about you. You should have written about yourself. You're the brave one." I wrote about both of us, about how sometimes being scared and being brave happen at the same time. My teacher loved it. "I'm proud of you, kiddo." "Jake, can I ask you something?" "Anything." "That night at the gas station when you saw me in the van, what made you decide to help? You could have driven away, pretended you didn't see. What made you stop? Jake thought about Jackson Miller and broken promises, about his own daughter who he'd failed in smaller ways, about the weight of regret and the hunger for redemption, about how one moment can define a life. I saw a little girl who needed help, he said simply, and I couldn't look away. That's all it was. I couldn't look away. I'm glad you didn't. Me too, sweetheart, me too. After they hung up, Jake walked to his workbench and looked at the photograph of Jackson Miller one last time. His friend smiled back from frozen youth. We did it, brother, Jake said. Your daughter is safe. She's strong. She's going to be okay. And I finally understand what you were trying to tell me. It's not about being fearless. It's about caring enough to act despite the fear. About not looking away when someone needs help. About keeping promises even when it takes 12 years. He set the photograph down gently. Outside, the autumn sun was setting. Jake walked to his Harley, started the engine, felt the familiar rumble. In the distance, he could hear other motorcycles approaching. Marco, Tanya, Ghost, Big Mike, his crew, his family. They had a ride planned tonight, a memorial ride for all the victims who hadn't made it, for the children still missing, for the fight still to be fought. Because the Iron Riders had learned something that night at the gas station. Sometimes the most dangerous-looking people have the biggest hearts. Sometimes heroes wear leather and ride Harley-Davidsons. Sometimes all it takes to change the world is refusing to look away. Jake pulled on his vest, the skull with wings catching the last rays of sunlight. He mounted his bike and waited for his crew to arrive. Ready for the next ride. Ready for whatever came next. Ready to never ever look away. Because that's what heroes do. They don't look away.